morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Thursday. It is Thursday.
It is. It's the week started slow, but it's gone suddenly crazy busy at the end.
Yes, it has gone crazy busy. So we're just going to, I shouldn't be allowed to play with technology. I was
going to say, this is not our strong suit, is it?
No. So we're just going to wait for our participants to jump on for our 10 o'clock webinar today. So we will give it a few minutes. I hope you're doing well in I was going to say sunny FNQ, but today's proving me to be wrong. It was quite miserable this morning, but it was still cold yesterday.
I know. Like most of it,
I packed all of my winter stuff away because the weekend was hot.
Yeah, the weekend was hot, and I was like, that's it, summer's come and it's changed.
Yeah, and so I packed all of my stuff away, and then it came and bit me.
Right, we've got some participants coming in here now. So with this video today, we're going to try and keep it to half an hour and then do Q&As at the end.
We're going to try.
We're going to try. And I'm probably going to do Q&As as I go along to Deanne, because my head hurts as we've gone through and put this together. So if you do have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section and we will definitely get to it.
Yeah, and if we can just get someone to drop us a hi or a response in the Q&A to let us know that you can hear us okay and that you can see us okay before we get started, that would be great. Anyone? It's hard to know who you're talking to, isn't it, when you're talking to a screen?
Yeah, no. Oh, there we go. Who is it?
And the winner is
Fran.
Thank
you so much, Fran. Excellent. Well, now maybe to make
that technology. See, look at that.
Oh, look, once we get started, we'll be fine.
We will.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to share the screen here with our webinar today. But I think we're going to preface this by this is some really big changes for the hospitality and the restaurant sectors and the relevant awards. And we're all navigating this together. We've got this new change that's coming in, these new amendments, and as we're sort of working through the wording, we're coming up with lots of what ifs, and we may not have all of the answers for those what ifs just yet, but this is a learning process for it all. So I guess we're in it together.
This is where our knowledge is now. And look, this is not uncommon when legislation comes into place. There is always what ifs, and then as it gets rolled out, there is clarification on certain areas. So we just not only need to get our head around it now and implement to the best of our ability, but then we also need to just continue to double check that our interpretation has been correct. That's just our way of saying that if we say something today that then proves to be not correct in the future, that is not our intent to give you the wrong information, but there's just some things that will get clarified, that there's different ways that you can interpret how it's going to be used.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let me share our screen for our little webinar here today. We shall start from the beginning.
So for those of you who haven't met with us or joined any of our webinars before, my name is Phoebe Kitto, so I'm one of the directors from HR Dynamics, and
my name is Deanne. I am the General Manager of Workplace Advice here for the team. So that's us.
Excellent. Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You're ready. Okay. That's you.
So first of all, we've got a traditional welcome that we would like to acknowledge the custodians of the land of which we operate on. And we pay our respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to all First Nations of Australia, recognising the sovereignty that is never ceded.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritties of why we're here. Essentially, our significant change that we're looking at is the changes to the annualised salary provisions that are currently contained within the Hospitality Industry General Award, or HIGA, as it's commonly known, and the Restaurant Industry Award. So two significant awards up here in Far North Queensland. We've got a lot of employees that are covered.
And the Sunshine Coast.
And the Sunshine Coast as well. That are covered by these two awards. And I think this is probably going to present probably one of the biggest changes we've seen in these awards for quite some time. And I've been asked the question already, why do they change things? How do these changes come about? And it's part of the 4-year review process that the Fair Work Commission goes through in terms of reviewing awards. So every one of the modern awards goes through a 4-year review cycle, and it just so happens to be that it's the HIGA and the restaurant awards turn to go through that review. But I also think that obviously you'd probably have to be living under a rock if you weren't familiar with all of the wage claims and the underpayment of wages situations that have occurred in the restaurant and hospitality sector, and I think that's played a big part.
Well, there's been a lot of media attention with some well-known names where that have come out as had underpayments, for their employees. And I would have to say in the majority of the case, the employers were unaware that they were underpaid. It was just a misinterpretation of the award. We have had some of these changes come through in other awards. The clerical award is one that comes to mind. Particularly around the annualised salary. I guess the challenges with the hospitality and the restaurant award is that whereas the clerical award is largely a Monday to Friday business, it's not nearly as complex. And also the hours and some of those other awards, such as clerical, they're fairly predictable and fairly consistent. The challenge we have with the HIGA and the restaurant award with those industries, the tourism industry as a whole, is that there's no such thing as normal. Yeah, exactly. And so you have the weekends, you have penalties, you have high season, you have low season, which makes what Fair Work are trying to do a really set pattern consistency. I feel like they're trying to make the way the industry operates fit a box that it doesn't kind of fit in. Would you agree with that, Jen?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think you've got a 7-day industry that's been trying to be put into almost a Monday to Friday type structure from the award process. And I think some employers may already be or have a little bit of experience with this annualised salary concept, because as Phoebe mentioned before, some awards have already gone down this path, and there's about 22 awards that were changed back in March 2020, and it was overlooked because we were dead in the heat of COVID, and then we were like, oh my god, we've got this annualised salary thing to worry about as well. So this is very much following in line. That's not to say it's going to make it an easy transition.
And if I can just use the analogy, if you think of a box, it's like trying to squeeze you into a box, and if you go in too tightly, you're overfilling, so you're kind of underpaying because you're not fitting in. It's almost, I feel, unfortunately, and I know the margins are really tight in your industries, it's almost like you need to get a slightly larger box. You're going to have to look at paying slightly higher salaries so that you're making sure that, you're meeting all of the requirements.
Yeah.
Because to get a neat fit is going to be super difficult for businesses.
And it may very well be that some organisations are going to have to look at their rostering practices for salaried staff, because essentially gone is the magic figure of 125%, and you're good to have them working sort of whenever you need. Typically, salaried people are the first people you call in when you're understaffed, and you get them to work on public holidays, and they're filling all the gaps, which then may put them well outside of the box that Fair Work is saying that you now have to fit into. Essentially, we've got sort of 4 touch points for you. We tried to make it as simple as possible, understanding that it's a very complex change that's going to be coming into these awards. So we know that the decision's been made. The changes for these 2 awards for the new annualised salary clauses will come in from the 1st of September, or your first full pay period on or after that date. Keeping in mind, you've also got the wage increase that's happening on the 1st of October, so anything that you do now is going to have to be recalculated essentially from October as well. So you've got 2 big milestones that are coming up. You're going to have to review what you're currently doing with your salaried staff. So I'd be asking myself these questions. Do I have salaried staff, yes or no? So if the answer is yes, then I need to do something. Do I have salaried staff that are part-time? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, you're going to probably need to do even more, because part-timers are going to be exempt from these salary arrangements. Do you have a set roster pattern? Yes or no? Can I get to a set roster pattern? Yes or no? And if you're answering yes to any of these, you are going to need to do, I guess, the full 4 stages.
Can I just step it back a little bit there to say, what is the difference between full-time and salary? So a full-time staff member is a person who is guaranteed 38 hours per week. They work 38 hours, they get paid 30 hours. If you don't have enough work, you're still going to have to pay them the 38 hours in cleaning duties or pay them additional pay them, send them home early, still pay them for the 38. That is the requirement. When you have a salary staff member, you actually have a salary, a certain amount that you're going to be paying them each week or each fortnight. So that might be, you know, $1,500 a week that you pay to your staff member, and it is expected that their hours will go up and down somewhat. So some weeks they might do 38, or some weeks they might do 42. Sometimes they work weekends, sometimes they don't. So but it doesn't change. The actual rate of pay doesn't change because they just get a set salary, which then averages out over the course of the year. That's sort of traditionally how we've looked at it. So if you've got people that you call them salary, but they only ever work 38 hours, they're very set with their hours and what they work, this is not going to be too problematic for you. It's more the salary staff that you've got where they have the varying hours and rosters that is going to be your pain point.
Yeah. And if you do have those salaried staff members that you've called salary that really work that fixed 38 hours and may not really fall in the definition of what the new salary clause is trying to do, you still may need to do a review and actually amend their employment documentation to take them off a salary.
And just make them full time, and then you don't have to worry about the 25% buyout.
Yeah, or you don't have to worry about the compliance with that clause.
Yeah.
So it is really an opportune time for you to look at all of your salaried employees and start to put them into categories, because what we do know is you're going to have to review all those salary calculations. You're going to have to become very familiar with what the new term outer limits are and how that applies. You're going to have to work out whether or not your rostering structure or your way of rostering does need a little bit of tweaking so that you can stay in the box. And you're going to need to consult with your employees. So you can't just change stuff because the award is saying you have to change stuff. You have to tell them that you are changing stuff because the award is telling you to change stuff. So consultation is critically important, and the notification of that consultation and telling them what's going to change and how it's going to impact them. And you're going to have to issue new contracts of employment to be compliant with the new salary clause.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you that are on EBAs, you are not impacted by this at this stage if your EBA doesn't.
Unless your EBA refers back to the award clause, which I can't see any that do, but you know, just on the off chance.
I still do think, though, that you should have your head around how your EBA applies and how that would compare against the award, because, you know, we are, without doubt, under the Labor government, going to see some changes with the EBAs and sunset clauses and making sure that EBAs still pass the better off. So you may not have to make immediate changes, but you probably need to arm yourself with some knowledge as to how this potentially will play out for you in the future.
That's it. And you may also be faced with some questions and challenges from your employees, because as we sort of edge closer to the 1st of September, there's probably going to be a little bit more media attention about it. People in the industry will be talking, so you may get some questions from your existing salaried staff members under an EBA that you just need, I guess, need to be armed with to be able to respond to. So, and then the fourth point is you're going to need to check it every year. That's exciting, isn't it?
I bet we're talking to good employers. They always check.
Absolutely. But I think the critical part with that one is you're going to have the records. So if you've had a practice of not having timesheets for your salaried staff, that's all about to change.
Excellent.
So let's start to have a look at what these changes are. We've briefly already gone through the fact of why these changes are coming about. Like I said, we can argue all day till we're black and blue in the face, but at the end of the day, Fair Work has made a decision as part of their 4-year award modernisation review, and this is the outcome. And you know, it is important, I guess, to understand that when they do the award reviews every 4 years, it's not just, I guess, a bunch of Fair Work commissioners sitting there going, this is what we want. There is industry consultation, there is peak bodies that are involved. So, you know, the likes of QHA, HIA, CCIQ, the unions, all of the parties would put their submissions in, and that's then taken into consideration in coming out with the final decision.
A good question that brings more flexibility.
Well, that's the Fair Work mantra.
Yeah.
Again,
I like to say it.
We could debate all day whether or not there is anything fair about Fair Work, but that's a whole other conversation I'm going to go into here. And as we said, it's designed to bring these two awards into alignment with the other awards that have already got this award, annualised salary clause in it. look, my little prediction, I like to get out my crystal ball in our webinars, as you know, is that it's only a matter of time before all awards have this annualised salary clause or a version of contained within.
Yeah.
It's just, I guess it's painful that it's now your turn.
Yes.
Okay, so the changes, as we said, will depend on your payroll period. So you need to work out how much time you've got, because you also need to be communicating this with your employees, because the media attention that may come, all of that conversation that goes in and around the industry will have the date of the 1st of September. If your first pay period is not till like the 13th of September, because you might be fortnightly and you're just lucky that that's when it falls.
Your last pay day fell into August.
Yes. You may not have to implement these changes. You might have an additional sort of 2-week window, but it's important that you're actually communicating this with your employees so that they don't self-assess, because self-assessment, as we know, is the root of all conflict. Okay. If you are using under the HIGA award the managerial salary clause, which specifically applies to managerial positions, they are not impacted by this change. All right. So where you've got things like, you know, don't quote me, don't shoot me, your restaurant manager, maybe a venue manager, anybody who falls into that managerial classification, and you're using the managerial absorption option for those positions, you can push them to the side. Where you may have a duty supervisor who's not within that definition of the managerial absorption, it will apply.
So just to clarify with this, you can't make the decision as to whether you want to push it into a managerial salary. No. It's very specific whether or not it is a person. So as Dee said, it's things like your restaurant managers, it will be your head chef, but you know, if you've got other chefs that are working on salary, if you've got supervisors that are working as on salary, you can't push them into the managerial side.
And you can't just change their title,
no,
to push them into the managerial category without actually having their duties reflect
that is their title.
Yeah. Okay. You need to start gathering your employee data. What sort of hours do they work? Are they regular and systematic? Are they sporadic? Can we make them regular and systematic, or what sort of degree of impact is that going to have on our business?
It's such a shit period to be doing this. We've come out of COVID, there's been nothing, it's been so busy.
And now we've got no staff, and we're just hitting our straps again.
So it's going to be a little bit of history, plus once we think things will settle down as well.
Yeah, and I think probably the biggest mistake that employers can make is that they focus right on the here and now. And right at the here and now, the feedback that we're getting is that there is a staff shortage and people are doing sort of more hours. That's not going to be forever. That will settle. We don't have a lot of, you know, historical data that's credible. We've got COVID data. So we've got closed down data, COVID data, no tourist data, and flat strap data, and nothing in between. So if we apply a very polar view of calculating what our employees are doing now, we could be shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah. So you'll need to spend a bit of time on that.
Yeah. Okay. And the obligation to consult with your employees. So I guess what we'll be looking at doing in trying to help hospitality and restaurant employees is to put together some documentation, which includes a consultation notice for your employees that sort of steps through. But we need the information, I guess, from the employer. So the homework sort of has to be done by the employer. We can help you with the homework and help you sort of frame it, but it's not something that you can completely outsource, I don't believe. So in partnership, yep, we can absolutely get there. The consultation is going to be the biggest thing. I think Beck wrote this slide. She said, remember the Manly jersey drama. So we don't want to be in that sort of situation. Surprise, and everybody be unhappy, because we know that we do have to try and keep our employees a little bit happy at this point in time, because they're hard to come by, our good staff. We need them to keep our business running, and they are typically your salaried employees. So yeah, as painful as it is, it's now time to sort of, I guess, get the wheels in motion and get the homework done, so that your changes can be implemented as pain-free as possible. So what are these changes? So the new terminology that is going to be your best friend, or not, is the introduction of these words, outer limits. And what this is designed to do is remove the, I guess, open slather 125% your salary.
Back in my
day, you picked the figure 125% and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
What the changes are is that they've now put, as Phoebe said before, a box. So these outer limits are as far as you can stretch the 125% salary figure. And those outer limits, they've put them into two categories. One is a limit of 18 ordinary hours that would attract a penalty rate. So a penalty rate, as opposed to overtime, over a 4-week roster. So we've got
Saturdays, Sundays.
Well, that was my next slide.
Oh, right. Sorry.
She stole my slide.
There you go.
So those are penalty rate hours. The other option, and I guess I preface this by the wording that has come out of the decision of Fair Work, is it refers to 18 ordinary hours that attract a penalty rate, or, and the big word there is or, an average of 12 hours overtime per week over the 4-week roster cycle. It does not say and or. It does not say a combination of. What it says in black and white is or. And I think this is one of those the areas that's going to get challenged, and it's going to be interpreted by people in different ways. What we're reading is it's one or the other.
This is like, I come from a hospitality background.
It doesn't
so
work.
I'm going to speak on behalf of the people here. That is like really frustrating.
Can I just say, we didn't write it.
Yeah,
so it's not as though
right.
we're supporting this
No.
and we're right behind it. Our job is to try and help you understand the changes that are being enforced.
And we are very aware of the fact that the reality is that you have staff that work overtime plus they work, or outside the 38 hours, plus they work potential Saturdays and Sundays. And this is going to be some pain and still a bit of clarification required as to how you can manage that. I think how that's actually going to play out in reality is going to be really interesting, I think.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I guess if I was approaching this, I'd be looking at, okay, on average, do I need my salaried employees to work more on a Saturday or a Sunday? Or do I need them to work more Monday to Friday?
Mm-hmm.
So if they are working pretty much every Saturday and Sunday, I'm probably likely to go with the outer limit of 18 penalty rate hours. If I need them to work 10 hours a day, Monday to Friday, for example, I would probably go the 12 hours overtime.
Mm-hmm. And you can't flip-flop, can you?
No, well, it says or.
Can you one week do one and the next week you do something else?
Well, it says or. We don't know. We don't have enough information, and we can't extract any more information from Fair Work at this point in time, because if you log on and you try to get any information, they'll say the changes aren't lawful yet because they don't come into the 1st of September, which is not helpful. So
I'm hoping that they say that it is or, that it is a set, you've got to set it to say you only get the 18 hours for the weekends. It would be on a roster basis. It's either the weekends or the overtime during the week.
So you're saying that potentially, if they could, and again, we're not 100% sure, they could do Wednesday to Sunday, for example, one week, and then Monday to Friday.
Overtime hours. It's going to be hard to manage though, isn't it?
It's going to be really hard, and it's I think trying to work out which scenarios are going to be the most simplistic, for the employee to understand, but also the employer to administer.
And this is when you're trying to work out what is the best option, it does come down to crunching the numbers. This is when we go, Kylie.
Stop stealing my slides.
All right.
I've got nothing left. So as far as we can say, we can only say what we can read at this point in time, and it's very much 18 or 12. So let's look at what is a penalty rate unit, because I think this is going to become important. So any hour that has a penalty rate attached to it under the award. So carry away as you were before.
Saturdays, Sundays, public holidays.
Excellent. So those three fall into the box. There is an exemption. Any hours that would have had the late work allowance attached to them are excluded. So you do not have to include, I think it's 7 to midnight, don't quote me off the top of my head, that attracted a $2.30 something allowance for a late work allowance. They are excluded from the calculation. So you really only have to worry about Saturdays, Sundays, and public holidays. And I think, again, this is where some complexities are going to arise, because it's all well and good if you've got a week that doesn't have a public holiday in it. So they might work Wednesday to Sunday. You've got your 18 penalty rate hours on Saturdays and Sundays, happy days, and then Easter comes along. And you've got a public holiday on Friday.
Cancel Easter.
Oh, you often say that every year.
As a business owner, I would like to cancel Easter. Maybe everyone else can take a holiday.
So it's going to throw a spanner in your work. So you're going to have to then start asking yourself some questions. Do I build my salary based on the majority of weeks and pay exemptions that fall outside the box? Or do I build my salary on the minority? And I think if you get into that space, you're going to be paying way too much.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really tricky. So you can say, well, we can do it, that they normally have Saturday, Sunday, public holiday, throw a spanner in the works. But then what about when they take annual leave and they're not actually working that Saturday and Sunday? So could I use my public holiday to offset those? I don't know. There's different scenarios. I probably would say, if it was my business that I was looking at this, I would almost question whether or not you just worked on the Saturday, Sundays, you put public holidays to the side and just said if they work a public holiday, you get a day off from work.
Yeah.
So that's another option. And it's going to be unique to the business. And those are some of the individual nuances that we need to work through with businesses to try and work out what model is going to work.
And I think you're really, a genuine question is, do you actually try to transition back to an award and penalty rate structure?
Yeah.
My observation, again, Deanne's little crystal ball, is that Fair Work has a preference that people work to an award plus penalty rate structure.
Yeah, they don't like salaries.
They do not like salaries. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, we'll just get an EBA done and this will all be, we'll get rid of this clause via an EBA, that's not going to be your answer either.
So just on that, can I say that if you are doing a salary, you should not be doing a salary because it's going to save you money, because it's not. If you're putting staff on salary, it is going to cost you more base potentially, or at least as good as, because you've got to have these buyouts with it. The reason that you would do a salary is to attract staff and give them consistency, to be able to say, we can offer you a salary of 65,000 or 70,000 or whatever it is that you're going to be paying. And, that is something that in this current employment climate, you might need to do. If you don't need to do that, and you are more focused on getting the most cost-effective rostering and payroll system possible, you better just to get rid of your salaries and just do straight as per the award. Then you don't have to pay anything extra. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can sort of see when we were talking about before that you're going to have to do new contracts and you're going to have to consult. It's because the way in which you're going to be remunerating your salaried employees is changing. And it's purely because of these introductions of these outer limits. So there are going to be some hard decisions, I think, that employers are going to have to make. And unfortunately, they probably don't have the luxury of time, resources, and energy, to be honest, to be making these decisions right now. But I can tell you firsthand that those three reasons of being exhausted, not having any staff, being too busy, Fair Work does not give tops.
Being a small business?
No, being a small business, it's completely irrelevant. And again, we're not saying that because it's what we believe to be fair and reasonable. We're saying that because our first and foremost, our priority is to make sure employers are as compliant as they can be, so that there's no fines, people don't go to jail, all of those sorts of things. Okay, so please, I feel really bad delivering this sort of information most of the time, because I know people never call me when they're having a good day.
Yeah, I go to some businesses and I say, how's your day? And they go, oh, it was good before you got here. It's never good once you get here.
It's true. So people never call us when they're having a good day. So let's just look at some examples. And I know these examples are very, very basic. So you might have an employee who's working 38 hours a week with 9 hours on both a Saturday and Sunday. So Wednesday to Sunday, typically probably the busiest times for restaurants and hospitality. So that might be something that we can, that works for business structure.
So just to clarify with that, so what you would pay an employee in that situation is their classification level.
Yes, let's just say level 4.
Level 4 plus 25%.
Yes.
And that means that they can work the 38 hours, which includes, it's not 38 hours plus Saturday, Sunday. It's as part of that 38 hours, they work both the Saturday, Sunday as kind of a flat rate that they're getting.
They get the 125%.
And they get 125% paid above the level 4 award rate. And, as the advantage, you don't have to worry about your late penalties too.
No, you do not. So that's a nice
It's a freebie.
It is a free. Well, you get something for free. No, you get nothing for free. That would fit in the box.
That fits in the box.
Where it wouldn't fit in the box is Easter, but Easter's been cancelled because February's cancelled.
Okay,
so that's right.
Yeah.
So then we just worry about like Anzac Day, Christmas Day, show holiday, all of the other ones that come about. Because that means that if a public holiday falls on a Friday, for example, you then have potentially 9 hours that you might be working on the Friday, 9 hours on the Saturday, 9 hours on the Sunday. You're over your 18 hours, straight up. So you're outside the box. So your salary arrangement needs to work out what you're going to do when things happen outside the box. So it's the whole purpose, and that's probably a really good analogy. You define what's in the box. You also define what happens when it's out of the box. Okay. And the other scenario that we sort of had there was an employee who'd work 50 hours Monday to Friday. So you could be doing them 10 hours a day, 38 ordinary hours, 12 hours overtime, fits nice and neatly in the box. If they then worked on a Saturday or a Sunday, you would then, or a public holiday, you'd have to go, that is outside the box. What is going to happen when it's outside the box?
And so if you have an employee who does 50 hours Wednesday to Sunday, what would you do?
If I had an employee that worked 50 hours Wednesday to Sunday, I'd be more inclined to use the 18 penalty unit hours.
Yeah, because I think it's a bit less, isn't it? You get a bit more with your Saturday, Sunday. The calculations aren't even, are they?
I don't believe so. Well, your overtime, there's a mix of time and a half and double time, depending on how many hours they do.
Yeah.
So, if you have an employee where you're calculating 12 hours at time and a half versus somebody who might have 2 hours at time and a half and then double time thereafter, depending on how their hours for the day are structured, there could be different dollar quantums. It was
12 hours, wasn't it?
Yes,
yeah.
12.
Yeah, so basically you could say, well, I'm going to have a salary staff member, and that means that I can get them to work up to the 50 hours, because that's the 12 hours, 38 plus 12, but I'll also pay a penalty rate for whenever they work a Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah. So you have to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
And then you have to define what happens outside that outer limit or outside the box. So I guess what's really, really important to try and clarify is that, let's just say, for example, I want my employee to work 50 hours Wednesday to Sunday.
Yeah.
I
just gave you that example.
Did you?
Yeah.
I didn't
you
hear that.
Keep going.
I'll keep going on my tangent. It's fine. So what are you going to do? If that's their regular roster and they do that week in, week out, you can still build an annual salary for that roster. But when you do the calculations, it may come out that your salary is 130% or 135 in equivalent. So yes, you can build a salary outside the 18-hour penalty hour limit, the 12 hours overtime, or the 25%. So you can add more in. It just means that you can't say it's 125%. It may be the equivalent of 130, 140. Okay, so yes, you can still build outside the box. You're just buying a bigger box.
Purchasing a bigger box.
Which is probably what some employers are going to want to do.
Look, and some employers will already do it. Some employers might pay, at the higher end, 90,000, 100,000. And they actually, when we do the calculations, they're buying out that 18 hours penalty plus Saturday, Sundays, and we're like, well, this is kind of what it buys out for you. So
yeah, and because I guess that's a key point, it's the salary clause is a minimum of a 25% rating, so it's a minimum of 125%. The market rate at the moment you might already be paying 140, 150.
My concern is that under the clerical award, there's some really gnarly wording around that to say that the calculations are only applicable to that pay period, that current pay period. Therefore, if you get someone doing 38 hours every week, and then one week they do 60 hours, they go, oh, no, you can only buy out 50, even though they were under for the rest of the week. We don't think that's going to happen under this with the wording. We think it allows more averaging out, don't we?
Something is ringing in my mind that it's an averaging
over the 12 months
weeks.
or 4 weeks, yeah.
Again, this is where we start to get into that complexity, where we're still learning. Where we're still
kind of getting our head around that averaging. I think it could be within a 4 week, but you're really going to have to be on foot for numbers. Right, I'm going down to the next slide.
Okay. So this is, again, just what we said, 25% is your minimum, and it only buys those outer limits.
Yeah, anything else you have to do, calculate out on the now.
You do, you have to calculate out. We can obviously, we're fairly good with our annualized salary calculations, and we can help you do that. So don't be thinking that if fitting into the outer limits is not an option for you, you can still have a salary arrangement. It just needs to be built.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that needs to be in your contracts of employment so that you're still compliant with the new award changes.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the additional public holiday provision under the HIGA award? Now, this provision came in however many years ago, which basically said that if you're a full-time employee, you get an extra day for a public holiday that falls on your RDO or a non-rostered day. This clause is now part of the buyout, so the 25% for new employees only. Yeah, so new employees only. I want to really emphasize the fact. So if you've got a new employee coming in or you're about to appoint somebody from the 1st of September onwards, that additional public holiday painful thing that came in with HIGA, you can get rid of that. However, your existing employees, you cannot just get rid of it because it is now it's an implied intent of it. It's a contract of their employment. So if you're wanting to do something with that additional public holiday clause for existing employees, you have two options: maintain it or buy it. So you can't just get rid of it because you're getting rid of a current term and condition of employment. So if you want to increase their salary to buy it out, that's fine, you can do that. If you want to keep it and grandfather it out for your existing employees, that's fine too. But you can't just say, oh no, we're not doing that anymore.
Exactly.
Okay, because you'll be reducing their terms and conditions. So here's Kylie. This is Kylie on our slide. She's actually on annual leave at the moment, so we have no issue putting her face up there and saying, hey, let's do it. We should be back next week. But this is usually where I would say, Kylie, can you help me with some calculations? Not that we can't do the calculations.
She's particularly good at doing calculations.
Oh, she's an accountant. And
she's got that finance background.
She likes Excel.
Yeah. So, and even she can either do the calculations from scratch, or if you do the calculations, she can check them for you. And importantly, make sure that the way that you calculate it is reflected in the contracts of employment. I think that's really important, that you need to have it very clear in those levels of employment to your staff as to how those calculations have been made, how the salary has been built.
Yeah. So, and I think as we mentioned before, we'll start to put together like a suite of documents, I guess, which will include your consultation notification to your employees. We'll start with some base wording for a salary to be compliant under the new clauses, but it's very much going to be a base because every organisation is going to be different. So we'll be like, let's put your data in to make sure that it's unique for you, covers off on your set of circumstances, but still compliant.
Yeah.
Okay. New contracts.
Yeah, new contracts for all your salary staff.
Yeah. And I think this is why the consultation, this is where it becomes really important, because if you just go and give a staff member a new contract of employment, they tend to freak out. They tend to go, what's wrong? Or what's changed? Or what do you
the changes are predominantly going to be positive probably for them.
Well, I think it's either going to result in a higher salary or a change to their rostering hours. It may very well be though that you want to change some of your salaries that have been working Monday to Friday, and you now want them to work on the weekends because that's more cost effective.
So good. Yeah. And remember, you can't force people into changing their contracts either. That's why it's called consultation. You'll have to sort of, discuss the proposal, how it's going to impact them, get them on side with it.
And through that, you might have employees coming back saying, I don't want to be on a salary anymore. I just want to be hourly plus
Or
penalty.
you might want to change them to hourly and they'll be like, no, I actually really like the consistency of the hours.
Yes.
So
one of the things that's going to be critically important in your new contracts of employment is how you then specify how you're going to pay out of the box and on what hourly rate you're going to pay it at.
Important.
Because there is an option for an employer to pay, obviously, the base rate of pay plus penalty instead of the 125%. If your contracts are silent on how you're going to pay it, by default, the hourly rate, which includes the 25% loading, will become your base rate.
So just to give an example of that, you might work out for simplicity that their hourly rate is $30 an hour for 38 hours. That's how you've worked their salary out to be. They're on $30.
That's including the 25%.
That's including the 25%.
Yep.
But then if you're paying additional hours, for overtime or weekends, whichever one it is, or public holidays, you might say that will default back to $25 an hour plus the penalties that it attracts. So it goes back and adds the penalties. So it's not the 30 plus the double time.
It's not compounding.
Yeah, it's not compounding.
Yeah, but if your contract does not deal with that, bad luck.
You
Your
have to pay the
default
high
rate is 30 plus penalty.
Yeah.
Okay. So documentation, again, we always say this, we bang on about this like a broken record, is you've got to have the documentation in place. So do you have timesheets? Yes or no? Are you going to need to get timesheets for your salaried staff members? And some employers go, I don't want them to, there's a fear factor sometimes with keeping those timesheets from the employee and from the employer. But basically you don't really have any other option anymore.
No, and look, I used to be guilty of that. We used to say just they were rostered, yes, they were on, or no, off, and that was kind of the timesheets. Now you actually need starting and finish times. And breaks in there really with it as well.
Yep.
Which does mean, if you're putting in their breaks and their start and their finish, you're going to have to be looking at it that people are just not, pushing out the hours, that they are taking their breaks. So you're really going to have it has to be managed. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess the magic concept of pick a figure, pay a figure, work whatever you like is sort of gone. It's out the window. The consultation, the documentation of the consultation, so not just bailing them up in the lunchroom and having a verbal conversation. I really want some evidence that actually occurred, so that you can clearly demonstrate and you can provide evidence that this is what was provided to the employee. If you're challenged for it, you need to be able to check it each year. My philosophy would be like I'd be checking it sort of each pay run, going, okay, what's in the box, what's out of the box.
So you can ballpark it, how many hours they've done, they're in the range.
Yep.
Or if it's starting to creep over.
And you're paying out of the box at the time that it happens. Okay. Making sure that your payroll team knows the changes, making sure that you're STP2 compliant, and showing how your salary needs to be reflected on their pay slip, and also making sure that everybody's rates of pay are updated, because we'll get so absorbed in this 1st of September change and we forget about the 1st of October and we miss a pay period, our employees get upset and it's just snowball from there.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Changes to part-time. So if you currently have a part-time employee on a salary, the bad news is that these annualised wage arrangements do not apply to part-time staff. So you are going to have to consult with any part-time employees that you may have on a salary, and you're going to have to move them off. Whether or not you move them off to potentially a higher rate of pay, flat hourly rates, there are some options there. And again, we can help you out with those.
We just need to dress it up and contract it in a slightly different way. The net result can still be the same.
Absolutely, but you will need to give them a new contract of employment, a new letter of engagement to make sure that you're compliant. Okay, and as Phoebe mentioned before, these changes will not impact clauses that are currently in EBAs. We do know there are a lot of historical EBAs that have passed their nominal expiry date, and whilst at this point in time there's no issue with that, provided you're keeping your base rates of pay updated with any Fair Work increases, that there is going to be sort of a push from the federal government to implement what we would call a sunset clause. They refer to them as zombie agreements, which could force an automatic expiry of those EBAs once that legislation is implemented. Having said that, I think I've been waiting for the government to implement a sunset clause. It's been a promise at every election for about the last 10 years. So,
well, the legislation went through. There's bipartisan support on that. It's just a matter of time as when the legislation goes before Parliament.
Yeah, it just becomes when it becomes high on the priority list.
Yeah. Which I think from a Labor's perspective that will be, because that's kind of an easy win for them to get from an IR perspective, because there is bipartisan support for it. So I think that I would be surprised if we don't see that come through.
This year I would be surprised. There's certainly a big push from the unions as well.
Questions?
Well, we did well. We kept it to 45, not half an hour.
It'd be important to note that any overseas workers on employer-sponsored visas have their salaries reviewed and employment contracts amended, saying as other employees to ensure compliance. I would 100% agree. You know, we are seeing a lot of visa sponsorship at the moment, which is great. We know we need more staff. But you need to be really careful to make sure that it is correct.
It's basically, if you've got a visa employee that's coming into your business that has been approved and has obviously got the right working rights to be working in that establishment, you need to be able to say that that visa employee is on the same terms and conditions as the, let's say, Australian employee or permanent resident that's working side by side.
Yeah, and the other thing too is don't fall into the trap to say, well, it was approved by immigration, therefore I should be right to go, I don't need to, because it's two different pieces of legislation. There's the immigration requirement, they can approve it, but then if they get approved under those conditions and fair work, they still have to always meet fair work, which means that they may be approved less. Yeah. Does this affect IFA agreements?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I'd say yes too. If you've got an IFA, I'd be really wanting to consider that. An IFA, individual flexibility agreement, it has to demonstrate that the employee is better off. They can't be enforced, and any IFAs that are currently floating around at the moment, I would just be double checking that it kind of does make that.
Well, and all because your IFA is an agreement to modify a term of the award. So it's now defunct potentially because you're modifying a clause in the award that has now been changed.
Yes, this is like so much flexibility with these.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I would be saying absolutely your IFAs do need to be re-looked at and redone under this salary debacle.
So we're not getting any more questions. I don't know if that means that we're just, they've gone to sleep or we're Basil.
Hopefully they're not Googling how to put their business up for sale. I don't like being the bearer of bad news.
Look, as with any changes, it does feel like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? It does feel like a doom and gloom. But you know, this is changes to the whole industry. The best thing that can happen is for all industry to apply, because at the end of the day, it is the public that are going to have to pay for it. This is the reality of what our cost structure is going to be. It is fair and equitable in that way. And so we just need to work through it. And yeah, look, we may not get it all right at the beginning, but we will certainly, it will work. The crinkles will get ironed out. And we'll get into a bit of a stride and a bit of the system.
Yeah, and I think even whilst we sort of navigate through the complexities of the award, and I'd probably just encourage employers to err on the side of caution rather than rushing out and buying the bigger box right now, because look, I'm only thinking of, for example, of the SHATS award, Social and Community Services. They went through that massive round of changes in July. And we're still trying, we've got a number of inquiries open with the Fair Work Ombudsman about clarity on those changes, and they can't answer our questions just yet. So I'm just sort of thinking I'd probably err on the side of caution rather than going bigger is better, because you can always go bigger is better later on, but just trying to stay as much as you can. So
understand the minimum requirement that you need to pay, that you have to pay, and then, you know, if you then with that knowledge want to go above, that's fine. Yes, there is going to be a record. There is a recording of this this webinar. I think did we push record?
It said before you are recording.
Oh,
You
we
just
are
did it all
recording.
by
There
itself.
we are.
Otherwise, you will see it on our Facebook page as well. We've done a live record on Facebook that you will be able to share if you need, if you think of anybody else that might want to watch it.
And we can send out the slides as well. So thank you so much for everybody for coming along. We certainly hope that is helpful. And if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to call Deanne.
Yeah, no, call Phoebe. No, Kylie. She's back on Tuesday. But it may very well be that we can look at some form of pack that can help employers navigate through this.
Yeah, I do think payroll is a huge cost, and it does require a certain investment to make sure that you are doing it correctly. Otherwise, you can get it wrong, and there can be tears.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you so much.
No
Enjoy
other
the rest of your
questions.
week.
We're good. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. Don't forget to give us a call if you've got any questions at all. See you.